METALVERSE, the baby metal little sister group that a lot of us have been really excited about, looking forward for it to come out. Well, it doesn't get its official release unpacking thing for a couple of days from today, and yet we did get our first look at the group from some footage that came out from recent live shows, and it has been bursting out everywhere, really exploding online on Discord. I've been seeing loads of people talk about it, lots of this video footage being played, and people really discussing what is this group going to be, looking at the whole format, the stage presence, the lineup, and I got into a lot of conversations with baby metal fans on baby metal discords because there were some subjects that it really raised in my mind about what we want the future of Amuse groups to look like. Now, at this point, of course, we really do not know anything particularly definite about METALVERSE, so this is more of a hypothetical conversation. If you want official confirmed news, either wait a couple of days or find someone who knows about that. This is more a conversation on what we really want from the whole Amuse, baby metal, METALVERSE kind of thing. And as you'll find out, the opinions were very, very mixed, but I can see opinions on both sides. I can see why both sides of this argument and the people in the middle have some very valid points. And that's what we're going to get into today. Hi everyone, welcome back to Japan, where we might as well start by just really talking about what we actually saw in the video before breaking down the potential positives and negatives depending on your standpoint. And really what we got from the get-go was a video of a group who, despite a slight blue tint to their outfits, they looked a lot like baby metal. 5 of them on stage performing to what appeared to be a live played rock backing, or more of a metal backing. We have one member in the middle who was singing the lead vocals. Apologies, I can't remember his name. I'm really bad at names, you guys know, but it was clear she was singing in the middle and she had like Sue's kind of style. And then we had 4 members around her doing the dance. They were not mic'd up. I paused to have a little look and see if there was any mics on them. They were not mic'd up. They weren't singing. They were just really dancing. But it was kind of impressive, seeing 4 dancers around one central singer. However, the thesis seemed to very much be the same as baby metal. The look was similar with a colour change, but you had similar sort of hairstyles, a similar design of one person really taking the main brunt of the singing performance. And if anything, probably leaning more into what we would consider the modern baby metal style. In the, we're used to Moa and Momoko having more limited vocals, or at least that's what we're expecting moving forwards. Of course, we haven't really had much in the way of Momoko singing on songs yet, but we're expecting it to primarily be Sue, and from the way they announced it when Momoko was announced, we're expecting them to sort of have like the scream backing vocal kind of thing, and Sue to be doing the core vocals. And this METALVERSE looked kind of like an extension of that, but maybe even more so in that we didn't see any mics on the other 4 members at all. Now, of course, that could change. Again, this is one of those things that might change in the future. We might see microphones on them, who knows? But just for now, that's what we've got to work with. And so we're going to be basing this conversation really on the hypothetical assumption that what we've seen is what's going to happen moving forwards, which it might well not be, but it's an interesting hypothetical, more because it really tests what we want to see from a group. Not necessarily because we think it's going to be exactly like this, but because it's an interesting sort of litmus test for what we all as fans want to see moving forwards. So looking at this, I'm going to first of all present really the 3 things that I would consider to be my concerns about if this is what METALVERSE is going to be moving forwards. And, these again are very subjectively my own concerns. And as you'll see from the rebuttals that I'll do in the next section, which are very much from my conversations with baby metal fans online, you'll see that there are 2 very different ways of looking at all these points. But it is probably fair that I lay these out first of all. Now, the first thing that really concerned me about it was the fact that, as I say, I saw a group where I was enjoying the songs, but it always just really me listening to one singer. And for me, one of the things I really want to see is I want to see, especially if you've got a larger lineup, and it seems that a lot of these members, from what I've heard, are being drafted from Sakura Gakuen, so there's a sort of a similar source to where the original baby metal members came from, even Momoko. So in a way, I kind of want to hear their voices like on Sakura Gakuen. And old Sakura Gakuen fans are going to be even more excited if they get to hear the voices of the people that they liked before, and plus it would give a variation to Baby Metal, because I don't really want a Baby Metal clone. You want something of a similar feeling. Yeah, that's great because they're kind of like sister groups, but you want them to be something distinctly different. And for me, what would make them distinctly different is if you had that larger number of members, meaning that they were more of a group singing group, you know, that a lot of the power, instead of having all the power coming from double kick drums, you can have the double kick drums, but have power coming from having like 5 girls on stage all singing together. That's what I really wanted to hear. And so in a way, I was kind of disappointed to not hear that. It was something that for me, it was like, okay, but when you have this much talent, why not show it? So that was my first concern. My second concern might sound like the same thing, but is actually a little bit different. In that when I was listening to the group, it was the fact that, and I know this might change, the fact that they weren't mic'd at all kind of made me think more about what makes a group. As in, if I can hear the drummer, and I can hear the guitarist, and I can hear the bassist, and they're all technically not members of METALVERSE, then I can't hear these 4 girls, but they're all technically members of METALVERSE. Does that make sense? For you to have a group where it's, you know, so this is a metal group, METALVERSE, they're a metal group, they come on stage and only 20% of the group can be heard, and of the music I'm hearing, probably more than 50% of it is coming from hired musicians. Is it really true, therefore, that these other people, are they even members of the group? Are we just listening to a solo singer? Is that really what we're hearing? As someone who primarily myself, I'm into the music. The music is my core draw. That's what I feel when I see this. And this is one of the things I was slightly campaigning against when we had the duet era, as I would call it, of Baby Metal, where it was just Sue and Moa. And I wanted to hear more of Moa. Yes, I know Sue's got more of a traditionally strong voice, but I wanted to hear more of Moa because I was like, you've got 2 members. If you don't have the other one really doing anything more than occasional backing vocals, it almost feels like we're just really listening to a Sue solo album. And so, you know, when I see this group, I want whatever the concern is to be eradicated. And just like, let's start this group as a group where everyone sings on equal footing. And yeah, if someone's stronger, they get slightly more lines or, you know, more prominent in the chorus or something. But that's kind of what I wanted to see there. And I was kind of therefore thinking, are they actually members if they don't sing? Now, my third and final concern is one that actually wasn't so much supported by the video that we saw, but has been something that's come up a lot in conversation, which is the idea that METALVERSE would be playing songs from Baby Metal's younger era. If you're like taking the songs that maybe would be considered too childish for Baby Metal, and then Baby Metal would no longer perform them, and METALVERSE would perform them instead. Now, I still believe METALVERSE are going to have their own original songs, but it's almost like the reallocation of those more formative songs from Baby Metal to METALVERSE. Now, my complaint about this is more a case of the fact that I, kind of similar to how I feel when Bish ended, and then the Whack record label came out with, oh, we're going to create the new Bish. It's like, for me, it's like, you know, there are people who are loyal to record companies. That's fine. If you're that kind of person, that's fine. But to me, you know, the song comes first, then the group, and the record company is somewhere way behind. You don't get to tell me this is the new Bish. I'll decide if this is not Bish anymore and you give me a new one, I'll decide if I accept this as a continuation of Bish. Because, you know, and this is kind of how I feel about the METALVERSE thing. If METALVERSE become the actual now holders of older Baby Metal songs, I mean, let's say Gimme Chocolate. Let's say Gimme Chocolate is a song that Baby Metal know, and again, I know this is hypothetical. Baby Metal are no longer going to play Gimme Chocolate, but METALVERSE are now the group who you have to go to hear Gimme Chocolate. I'd be like, well, no, for me then, no. I don't care if you've officially redesignated that song to them. They are a cover band. They might be a cover band under the same label, they might be picked, they might be very well funded, but they're a cover band because as an audience, you make a connection to the artist and the song. If I hear a song being played by a cover band, I can still enjoy it for all the original reasons if it's a good rendition. But it's not the same as going and seeing the artist who played that first song you heard, you know, when you first heard it, when it first had that impression. It's not the same as hearing that band playing it. Now, interesting, no one brought up this point in the discussion, which I found rather interesting, but I thought of it myself, which is, of course, you could argue that, well, yes, if you look at a song like Gimme Chocolate, it had Yui on it, and of course, Yui's not in Baby Metal anymore. And I do kind of accept that. I mean, if we got to a point where, let's say, for some reason Maya left and then Maya got replaced, and we had only Sue was the only original member of BABYMETAL left, I would then start to, even songs like Gimme Chocolate, it would be harder for me to really enjoy it, because I'd still be like, yeah, but it's kind of BABYMETAL, but it's not, And so if I saw Gimme Chocolate being performed by this iteration of BABYMETAL, as much as I have been a massive supporter of Momoko, I'm a massive proponent of her being a fantastic addition to the group. I must admit, I would prefer to see the original lineup do Gimme Chocolate, and I'm sad that that's not something I'll ever get to see again. But because it's 2/3 the original members, I can take that. But just like a band who are like, yeah, well, we've been approved by the original to come and sing their songs, like, nah, it's not the same thing. I mean, if basically Ma got replaced, God forbid, I can't believe I just said that, and then for some reason Sue left and then Sue got replaced, I wouldn't even care if they did Give Me Chocolate. I'd just be like, yeah, but it's not. You've got the BABYMETAL name, but it's not the group. Who, you can continue the career, that's fine. Then I wouldn't care. But they are, BABYMETAL still exists. So I don't, if their songs are handed off to another group, for me, that's partly sad because I will never accept another group doing it as anything other than, oh yeah, cover band. And partly, well, the main reason is I'd just be sad that we never get to hear the still existing BABYMETAL do the songs that are their songs and have such a strong connection to their fans. Again, I know this is hypothetical. I don't think anyone's confirmed this is going to happen. But for me, that is something that has been discussed, and that's my feeling on that. So what we're going to do is, now I've put out those points, now we're going to look at some of the rebuttals. And there were some really good rebuttals against the 3 cases that I made. Now, thank you first of all to the selection of BABYMETAL fans I talked to on Discord who were actually really nice about talking about this, and they all had slightly different opinions, but I kind of went through and discussed it with them as a group to really whittle down to the opinions that I personally found most convincing and tried to, if you like, bring them together as an argument against my concerns, to sort of really see the counter. So first of all, we're going to start with that point I made regarding shouldn't the whole group sing? Now, of the 3 points, I'd say this was probably the one that I was most middlingly convinced by the rebuttal to, which was that it was kind of suggested, well, okay, these guys are all coming from Sakura Gakuin, or at least, from the Amuse pool, so kind of like, post Sakura Gakuin, we're going to see a lot of members from there. And the argument was, well, they are coming from an idol background. And when you look at idol groups, as a general, yes, they sing and they dance because that's the medium by which we get to know them. But idols, realistically, a lot of the time they're doing it as just kind of generic general entertainers. Singing and dancing is the most core thing, but they're general entertainers, and many of them go on to careers in things like acting, TV presenting. Some of them become news presenters. You get all kinds of different careers that come up. Some become models, all kinds of stuff. So, restricting them to, well, you're in this group, so you should sing, kind of overlooks what the point of Sakura Gakuin was. And I think a lot of people, it seems to be a general consensus that a lot of people felt more comfortable thinking of METALVERSE as a sort of an after effect of Sakura Gakuin than just being something attached to the side of BABYMETAL. So I could really see that, especially hearing that from Sakura Gakuin fans. I could really see how that is a fair way of looking at it. I still stick to my rebuttal, though, my rebuttal to the rebuttal slightly, is that although I do get that, they are still in a situation here where, they're on stage, and I feel almost like it's not that they don't want to sing, but because, that it's like, it's not the format. It's being said, well, this is we want a format where you've got one strong singer and everyone else dances. Almost like that's been prescribed to them rather than chosen. It almost feels like, in a way, to say that, okay, well, a lot of idols, they don't become singers, almost feels to me like a bit of an excuse to kind of validate the fact that they're not singing. I still don't think that's a good enough reason to have them not singing, because, of course, when you're in an idol group, the most likely career after this is going on to do more singing, because that is still the primary thing idols do, sing and dance. So I think not having them mic'd up at all, of course, this is probably the one thing that's most likely to change in the next few days. But at least at this current moment, I think having them not mic'd up at all, I still think it's a bad thing. I still also think it's a waste of potential talent. It was kind of mentioned, it's like, well, do you really want to mic them up when some of them might not be that good singers? I thought, well, they're ex-Sakura Gakuin. So if they were, there's so much young singing talent in Japan, and they've been raised through the system. If they can't sing and dance at this point, then, there's plenty of people standing behind them who'll gladly take that point. And especially when you're performing on stages at live music events, I still don't think that's a good enough argument to me for them not to sing. I still think ultimately this should be a group where everyone sings, whether it's all together or in turn. I don't think it should be a single singer group. I stand by that. Luckily, I do think that's the one, of all the points I've mentioned, I think that's the one thing that's most likely to change. I think we probably will, in the same way that when Momoko had her first appearance on stage, she wasn't mic'd up, and then the very next night she was. I think we're going to see something probably like that. But just for now, while we're playing with this little hypothetical game, yeah, that's something that I think it's probably likely going to change, but I certainly hope and think it should. Because I think it's a waste of good talent if that's not the case. Now this moves us on to the rebuttal to my next point, and my next point wasn't so much a criticism of the band, just more of a question to what are we actually doing here, as in what, if you like, what actually is a band? In that I was saying that, as pointed out, well, if you've got live musicians and they're not part of the band, but then you've got people who are dancing but not actually adding anything to the music, and they are part of the band, what is the band? Now, obviously, this was slightly in a similar area where we had that conversation about, what idols, they do various different things. But the question then started to come up about, bands who have members who don't really contribute much to the music, and people mentioned things like Bez from the Happy Mondays, thinking of like Flavor Flav from Public Enemy, people who don't really contribute much artistically but are kind of there. I was saying that then again, though, those people are often kind of just like an additional extra, like an oddity, rather than 80% of the band lineup. And we then went on to a conversation more of the fact that a lot of people, for them, the most important thing about BABYMETAL, to use that as the, if you like, the benchmark, is the live shows. It's a very visual thing. They've taken the visual side. I found this rather interesting, as of course, if the visual is the main thing, it's rather interesting that, BABYMETAL, up until that Fantastic Metal-y video, they haven't really had many music videos of recent. They've had a lot of the live music videos, but, it's not like we really get, we don't get a lot of their material online to look at. So it's interesting that the visual would be so heavily pushed, where unlike the music, it's not so ubiquitous. It's not something that's so easy for us to just take in regularly online. But for a lot of people, they were saying, well, look, even if they make no sound, the dancing is a big part of it. And I kind of accept this because I've always said that one of the qualities of BABYMETAL is the theatrical quality. They have the whole lore thing. Again, if somebody mostly just cares about the music, I don't really pay much attention to the lore. I find it kind of fun, but I don't really pay any attention to it. But they have the lore, they have the outfits, the Kami band have their outfits, which disguise the members being changed all the time. And we have a lot of that kind of thing. So there is a theatrical element. A lot of the songs are even written in a way where there's a big theatrical thing to it. Look at The One. The One is probably one of my least favourite BABYMETAL songs. But then when you see it performed, and that famous video of them sort of going across the crowd in that kind of thing that's swinging them over the crowd, you see this and it reminds you there is a theatrical element that is very important to what BABYMETAL is. And so if METALVERSE can do that, I kind of see it. Now, for me, this does still mean that it's hard for me, because the thing, as a listener, I know that if those four members were taken out of the group, for me, as someone who pretty much my only contact with these bands really is usually just listening to them, I would hear no difference. And so that does always leave it in my head that those members, I hate to say it, but if they're not going to make any sound, I don't really care that much. It's like, oh, if one of them left and got replaced, I wouldn't really care. And one of the points that was brought up by someone was that maybe this is a thing by Koba, in that Koba saw the backlash from when Yui, I'm not getting into that conversation again, but for whatever reason was no longer in BABYMETAL. And so as a result, he wanted the other members to be more easily replaced. But for me, if members are disposable, then are they really in the group at all? And for me, as someone who's listening, a member who I cannot hear is somewhat disposable. So then I only really care about one member. So for me, as a listener, it becomes a solo performer. That's what it is. And that's the interesting thing, because you have crossed over in forms of media. You know, you could be someone who takes in the whole show. Now, does that mean that you only get to enjoy METALVERSE properly when you go to their live shows? Does it mean you only really take in their music by watching their live DVDs or Blu-rays, or that's a bit old-fashioned, but you know, like their live concerts on video? Is that the only way you really take them in and enjoy them? If you enjoy them as audio only, does that, in those moments, are you missing the members who are just dancing and not singing? For me, it's very interesting, because I am primarily a music listener, but I would love to know, this is one where I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. But what really surprised me is on my live chat, I put up a poll, which you should be able to see on the screen, to ask people what their feelings were about having members in a band who were considered part of the band but essentially made no sound. And I gave the options of being okay with it and not being okay with it, and sort of saying in certain circumstances it works. And I kind of figured most people would say, well, in certain circumstances. I thought it'd be a slightly watery reaction. Much to my surprise, with the 21 votes, 14 people said they're okay for bands to have members in who literally make no sound but are considered members of the band. I think of the remainder, I think it was split like 4 against 3, but it was either only 3 or 4 people said no, you've got to make a sound to be in the band out of 21, and that really surprised me. But statistics are statistics. It's only a small poll, but it was a poll of the people following that live chat, and it really made me think. So again, I'd love to see your comments about this below. Which brings us on to the very last point, and strangely enough, the one that no one really had a rebuttal for, which is the idea. A lot of people said this. A lot of people were like, oh, you know, well, they sort of said the line, BABYMETAL, oh, they're too old to play certain songs. And every time I presented that argument, yes, but if someone else plays it, it's not their song, I never really got a response to that. So again, this is one I'd really like to see what you guys say in the comments too. But yeah, I maintain my original point. Now, of course, we don't know, I don't think anyone knows for certain whether that's even going to happen yet. I believe that METALVERSE have access to playing some of the BABYMETAL songs, which makes sense to help them establish themselves, because I think it would be better for them to establish themselves with their own identity rather than rely too much on their connection to BABYMETAL. However, I'd really like to know how you guys would feel about that. Would you like to feel like this was a reset of BABYMETAL, like you were getting BABYMETAL starting all again from the fresh and from the young? Or would it always just feel like a cover band, which is the way it would feel to me, if I'm honest with you? And moreover, how do you feel about METALVERSE having to make their own legacy? Because my biggest concern with the similarity between them and BABYMETAL is that it almost feels like they'll always exist within the shadow, the more similar they are. And I'm surprised how similar they are to BABYMETAL. There's something that almost feels safe about how they're out. I was expecting their outfits would look more different than just a color change. I was particularly surprised to see that one member had like a Sue-style haircut and was in the middle doing the singing, whilst the other members looked like they had the sort of the backing Yui Momoko style hairstyle whilst doing the dancing. It really felt to me like someone had went, quick, copy-paste the formula. How do you feel about them being so similar? Do you think this could be something that could affect their legacy? Do you think they'll ever have their own legacy whilst they are so similar to the BABYMETAL formula? Or in fact, do you not agree that they are as well? And moreover, do you have a rebuttal to my comment about them playing BABYMETAL's songs? But in conclusion, this is all hypothetical, of course. Interesting thing is this video will probably be redundant in a few days, and yet this is what I think is so nice about talking about music, is because we're not really talking about what we think is actually going to happen here, although it might happen. We're more talking about what we want to happen, what concerns us, and what makes the music that we love. And the reason why we talk about this is because it's easy and it's completely true to say that music is subjective and just go, I like that, that's all that matters. It's true. If you like something, that's all that matters. But when you understand why you like something, it makes it so much easier to navigate your interests, to find other things you might like, to understand when maybe the things stop becoming as appealing to you or when they become more appealing to you. So discussing things like this for me is an interesting hypothetical, and it gives us an insight into how groups are made and how we are entertained, and what the importance of being original and different, or the importance of maintaining the sanctity of a particular formula and keeping something alive. So I'm really interested to know what you guys say on these various points. I know this has been a bit of a waffly one. It was, again, it's a hypothetical one, so I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be some slightly tighter videos coming for the rest of this week, but again, hope you enjoyed this one, and until I hopefully see you very soon in Japan, or in the comments, moreover, for now, ciao, ciao.